Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode on my channel. Thank you, everybody who watched my previous video and liked, commented, and subscribed. And I want you to brace yourselves for this video, for it's going to be more intense, as this was the most difficult part of my healing journey. Um, I will be talking about the 1.5 months that I spent in Mexico. So I would kindly like to ask you to not feel bad for me. Don't feel any pity and turn your empathy a bit off if you can. Because that's not the energy I'm trying to create nor invite into my own life. Okay, so I left off the last video at the point where I entered the surgery. The surgery took 3 hours, and um, I had another surgery in that hospital in Cancun, as well as one procedure where they cut me open, but I was awake. So when I woke up on the 15th of December 2023, I was in intensive care, and there were lots of people running around there. There were many other people in beds. So when I woke up, I looked at my body, I lifted my blanket, and I saw that my entire stomach was sort of patched up. And they had entered my body through my stomach because the bullet went in from the left side of my butt and ended up in the right hip. And it went through all the organs that were on the way. So rectum, uterus, everything. And they had to open me up and start fixing things up in there. So obviously, I needed to get hold of my parents. And I remember feeling so bad. I was like, oh my God, I have to tell my parents what happened to me. And I almost didn't want to do it, but the nurse was like, what the heck? Like, just call them. But that wasn't even as easy because there were no phones allowed in that um, part of the hospital. And so the interns who were like floating around there ended up smuggling their own phones to my bed, being like, shh, like, don't tell anybody, but use my phone, contact your family. So I did. Of course, my family knew already because I had let some people know that I was shot as I got shot. So they were aware already. Um, and then they moved me to another part of the hospital, like a floor up in a couple of days, where people could come and visit me. So my friend ended up picking up all my things from the Selina hostel in Tulum and bringing it to me. But again, I wasn't allowed to use a phone, which was like the wildest thing. Like I'm literally a foreigner in Mexico and my family's in Europe. Like I need to talk to them. And the weirdest thing was that the room that I was in, also the rooms were mixed in Mexico, so there were both men and women in there. There was a girl diagonally across me who had her phone and she was allowed to have it. So my friend ended up having this whole fight with them about it. But regardless, they didn't allow me to have a phone. But I had two phones because one was for work and one was like my normal one. So at least I had one and I was just hiding it in my bed. Um, my dad arrived, I want to say on the 19th, I think, like 4 days after the whole thing, 4 or 5 days. And he booked himself this nice hotel with a pool. You know, he was thinking he was going to be able to have this little downtime whenever he wasn't with me. That never happened because that was literally the beginning of the hardest, most intense period of my healing journey. And of course, before he even made it to the hospital, he went to Oxo because I had asked him, this local store, to top up my internet for my phone because I had a local SIM and stuff. And he somehow managed to, I don't know, enter the store, throw his phone up into the air, and obviously it fell on the ground and broke completely. So there he was, like stranded at Oxo with no idea where to go with a broken phone. But he just got a new one somewhere and found me in the end. And there was this whole strange rule about visiting as well. So you needed a permit to be able to visit me. And luckily, we were able to get like a permanent pass, so my dad could be with me 24/7, which was very useful. As there were literally hundreds of people on daily basis trying to get in to see their family. And this was also a religious hospital, Jesus something. So there were a bunch of people in front of the hospital every day having like concerts, like religious concerts, and doing whatever they were doing. I guess maybe praying. I don't know really. I never saw the front of the hospital personally. So, and there was like military bringing them food every day. I don't know. I just thought I'd mention this fun little fact. It is Mexico, party everywhere at all times, you know. And um, yeah, the staff was really nice at the hospital. I made friends with the janitor who was hanging out every day, listening to music in his front pocket, sweeping about, singing, like vibes, you know. And also with nurses, as well as some other staff members and doctors. I even ended up having like a few Facebook friends, and yeah, sometimes they would smuggle me like stuff from the shop, ask me like, "What do you want? What do you want from Oxo?" And I would tell them like chocolate and stuff like this. So as for the injuries, my hemoglobin was really low because I lost a lot of blood. Um, then it was always 70 and lower. I ended up having 4 blood transfusions in that hospital. But what was the hardest thing for me personally was the pain, because they were only giving me paracetamol and some other painkiller that I don't remember the name of. Then it was never enough because the bullet was still in my hip. They weren't able to remove it for whatever reason. It was really dangerous because it was like stuck inside the bone. And yeah, so on a 10 scale, 10-point scale of pain, 10 being the highest, my pain was constantly 11 during like every second of my existence, essentially. And another thing that was very difficult was the daily wound cleanings because my stomach was literally open and the bullet wound was around this deep. It went through my whole body, you know, and they had to clean both of these on daily basis, and that was hell, literal hell. I'm so grateful that my dad was there because he was literally holding my hand as we were just talking about dreaming about being on the beach and like all these things, what we would do when we were out of there just to get my mind off it. But I could still feel everything. And very sometimes they would use this specific transparent spray. I don't remember the name of it, but I know that they couldn't use it a lot because it significantly increased the chance of getting a heart attack. So that that was that. And also my fever was like around 38, 39 degrees at all times. So at some point I was literally like covered with wet patches everywhere because nothing was helping. And my dad, bless him, was literally sleeping next to my bed on a towel the nights where it was really bad for me. And also the AC was fucking freezing. And it wasn't possible to change it no matter how many times we had asked. And obviously it wasn't ideal with me having this huge fever at all times. So in the end, my dad took my phone and took a photo of the AC area, like on the wall. It was like 3 meters high. So he zoomed in because his phone was broken and he just bought like a really crap one. And he took a photo of the buttons and then got on a chair and used the back of a broom to click like the right buttons to turn the temperature down a bit, and that helped. Also, the food at the hospital was not great, unfortunately. It's a bit wild, actually, because they were offering literally shredded chicken with no salt or pepper and uh, corn tortillas. That was it, and a bit of papaya. I do know that it was like a lower class hospital, so actually a lot of the time they didn't have medicine that so we had to buy it ourselves from the pharmacy. Again, thank God my dad was there. And um yeah, that's the reason why probably the food wasn't great either. So, what my dad did, he would just go to different taquerias, different food places to ask them to cut down tiny pieces of meat, put it in a plastic bag so he could smuggle that food in the hospital inside his socks and like pockets, which is just wild. But again, there were restrictions on what you could bring into the hospital. Like the really basic things were really difficult for some reason. Um, I did end up losing like around 10 kilograms within a month and a half. So really, I was given like skeleton vibes at some point. I will say though that what was really good and efficient in that hospital was the fact that my medical history and everybody's medical history was always on the table in front of their bed, because in Estonia, for example, all that information is online. So more often than not, people that would come to me first time, they had no idea who I was or what had happened to me. Whereas in Mexico, that system was great because even if people saw you for the first time, they would literally just open up the file in front of me and go through and see what's up. And because my dad was literally fighting for my life, he had to, talk to the doctors every day pretty much to keep things going, make sure that there's progress, make sure that everything was good. So at some point, the doctors had had enough of him, and every time they saw him sort of coming from the corner of their eye, they were like, "Oh God," and tried to run away. Um, but my dad was just consistent and stayed in front of the door of the doctor's cabinet or whatever and got hold of them anyway. That said, though, some of the doctors were just awesome. They were always joking. We were, as much as we could, we were always laughing. Like it was good. In that sense. Um, Also, we ended up having a live with Estonian TV because we needed to raise awareness about my situation as the embassy in Mexico didn't offer any help. And they said they were, but they weren't. And um, we needed money for my flight because I could only travel horizontally. And for that, we needed a private medical jet. And it cost, let me see, it cost 138,000 euros. And basically, we ended up having the live in the morning, Mexican time. And by the evening, I was in coma. So I think that is the reason for that is a couple of things. First, it's the pain. The pain was too much. After a month and a half, by that time, my body had been under consistent pressure. And then also I had a blood transfusion, after which I went into delirium as I developed blood poisoning, sepsis, and then yeah, went into coma. From a spiritual aspect, I think I just left my body. I just couldn't stay in my body any longer because it was too much. And so when that happened, my dad straight away got into uh, contact with people who were doing energetic healing and stuff. So my family has never been religious. I actually had never even prayed until that hospital where some of the patients' daughter, like family members, like this daughter and one nurse, they were sometimes praying with me as it was like a religious hospital and stuff. And I actually really liked it. It was so kind of them to do that for me, and it just felt really warm and fuzzy and nice. So anyway, my dad found some people, his old singing teacher, who was connected to a church in Estonia, and they ended up sending healing for me from there. And after they sent that energy healing, I actually suddenly woke up from the coma and said to my dad, Daddy, when I die, please write my name on my chest so that they will know who I am when I cross over. And I said that Jesus is waiting for me or asking me or inviting me, something like this. So that was my near-death experience, and I am absolutely horrified that my dad had to go through this. I cannot imagine what he must have felt like in that moment. Um, yeah, that was horrible. After that, my dad also got in touch with some other energy healers, such as this amazing witchy lady that is currently renting my mom's house in Estonia. I absolutely love her. Her and her friend ended up pulling me back into my body or putting like a roof on top of me, so to say. That's how she described it. But I think it was more like they helped me get back into my body. And there was another man who had a group of healers as well. And they started sending me healing on daily basis, like swapping who was sending that day, like every other day, basically, alternate days. And I gained consciousness within a week. So that was cool. And also, there was this weird moment when this strange looking man appeared in front of my bed around 1 a.m. and my dad could just tell like that he wasn't part of the hospital. He also wasn't the police, but he was different. There was like a different vibe about him. Luckily, my dad and this my neighboring patient's son, like an adult son, were there in that during that moment, and they clocked it straight away. And um, so I was aware who I was talking to, and he just asked me whether I had seen anything or if I knew anything about the shooting, and I said that I didn't, which is true. But we can all imagine who that was. By that time, around 10 days after I had woken up from coma, we had most of the money together. People had donated 78,000 and the flight was 138,000. So the rest was paid by my family. Again, thank you everybody from the bottom of my heart because if people didn't help me get out of there at that time, I probably wouldn't be telling this story right now. And there was this huge group of people actually who were all helping to organize the flight, the hospital in Estonia, getting out of Mexico, getting documents translated. I mean, it was all my family members and some family members' friends. And there was just so much happening behind the scenes as I was like fighting for my life. There were so many people fighting for me actually, and for that I'm also forever grateful. And also because I was like awake but not fully awake, then there were some difficulties with getting access to all of that money because obviously it was sent to my account, but I wasn't really in a state of going into my online banking. So my dad was literally sitting there with a pen and paper trying to get my online banking details out of me, which is ridiculous. And I would often tell him like a couple of numbers and then get knocked out again. But in the end, it all worked out. And the bank was really helpful as well because obviously my card had a limit, like a ridiculously low limit, when we had to make this huge payment. So by the end of January, the German medical flight medical team arrived, and I was escorted out of the hospital. Straight away, as I got into the ambulance and they put me on this stretcher bed thing, they gave me something. And because suddenly I started having like a psychedelic trip, and I was like, guys, what did you give me? Am I tripping right now? And they were like, oh, it's ketamine. Do you like it? Do you want more? I was like, fuck yes. Because literally it was the first moment since December that I felt some sort of ease. Even though I was tripping, it was still better than what was happening before. So, once we got to the private jet, the plane had broken. And they wanted to take us back to the same hospital, but my dad said, absolutely not, unless we are going back there to die. Because it would have been mentally and physically impossible. And he said that we will only go to the nearest and best hospital. So luckily, luckily the German flight company took care of that, as the payment for that private hospital per day was 10,000 euros. Still, we had to wait in the waiting room for 6 hours because for some wild reason, the payment just wasn't going through. But in the end, it did. And then we spent 2 or 3 days there, and it actually ended up being a good thing. Everything happens for a reason. Because they really perked me up and got me into a better position to travel and did another blood transfer. So I was in a better shape because the flight took 20 hours. And also there was a moment where my dad ended up sleeping on the sofa nearby because it was a really nice hospital, you know, and over were the days of sleeping on a towel. But the sofa, of course, was infested with like termites or ants or something horrible. So he ended up sleeping in this hospital bed close to me and had the best sleep of his, I don't know, existence in that moment. And he just lifted his bed up to almost the ceiling and slept like a baby. All right, so once the plane was fixed, we got on there. Also, shout out to the medical team who was with me. They were so cool. I enjoyed hanging out with them. And obviously, they were giving me drugs, so that was a bonus. And first, we flew to Quebec in Canada. Then we flew to Iceland. And then, because the plane broke again, we we flew to Germany and changed the plane there, and the medical staff, the new ones were cool as well. So now, finally, we were in Estonia, and the local ambulance arrived in front of the private jet. But they didn't realize for some reason that my dad was with me. So they just asked him for my passport and sort of just left him there in the middle of nowhere next to this plane with all the bags. Like, okay, see you. And took off. So somehow, and mind you, it was like, I don't know how cold it was, but it could have easily been like -20 and all ice because it's Estonia. And so by the time he got into the airport and to the immigration bit, he realized that he had given them the wrong passport and he still had mine. But somehow he was still able to get out of the hospital and he just came there straight away. And when I got to the hospital, first I had a bit of a culture shock because how serious everybody was. Of course, coming from Mexico, where everything was like fun and la la la, it was a huge difference. But of course, for the first time, I was truly relieved because I was at home. I didn't have to speak in Spanish anymore, in my broken Spanish, because I had forgotten so much over the years. And um, they took away the pain, and as well as gave me this little pack where they mixed morphine and ketamine together. So I had this literal little pump that I could press every time I felt pain, which was all the time, and it would inject the medicine directly into my vein. And um, I had to actually ask them to get the ketamine removed pretty much straight away because while it was fun during the flight, then it was less ideal just tripping every half an hour. Okay, so to put things into perspective a little bit, my bullet wound as of early November 2024 is still healing. There's like a tiny, teeny bit left that has to heal. And then once that heals, I can have the next surgery on my stomach and they can close up my stomach that is still open and stuff. And I currently don't have a hip bone, so I'm waiting for, they removed it because the infection caused by the bullet ended up being so crazy that they had to literally remove the bone from there. So I'm waiting for my next hip surgery this month, hopefully. And yeah, there is more, but it wouldn't make sense to mention it now. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to grow my account because I have stepped into service of humanity, and therefore I want to help anybody else going through what I'm going through, or anybody who's looking for energetic healing or readings about their life, or yeah, it's all of that psychic stuff. So I truly will do appreciate it when you help me in that way. So thanks again, and see you in the next video.